let's solve this game. Let's remember what this game is doing. So I have different cards, and every time I need to click a different card, and if I click the same card that I clicked before, I lose the game. So how do we do that? Well, I like to first separately think, very thoughtful, what should I do? And when we're coding games, I like to divide these games by phases. So game start, turn, and game end. So first, let's say I have when I start the game, I have a of original array of colors. In this case, I have red, blue, and purple. I don't know, just an example. And I start this game. I also have a counter that tells me how many turns I did, or like how many clicks I've given. And then when I make a turn, I need to have a different variable that remembers what colors I selected already. So let's say I click on the red button, so I will have a red. And then let's say that I then click on the purple button, then I have a purple. And when does the game end? It's when my array of selected colors receives a color that exists already, right? Like whenever I have this duplication, then I lose the game. And then I need to remember somehow that I lost. And I can restart maybe, I don't know. So how do we do that? Well, I have a React application recently created. It's just a hello world. It's right here. So the first thing that I will always like to do is to start with the HTML skeleton. And excuse me for my UI, I want to do this class to focus on React and JavaScript and not in HTML. So what I like to do is having this HTML skeleton ready. So let's just do it. We'll close a div, and then whoop, I think I just need to add this counter with 0, and then I need to add these buttons with these 3 colors, red, and then blue, and then I don't know, yellow or purple. So that, and don't forget to export the function. And that will give me this interface, right? Again, this is just HTML, not React just yet. We will do that in a minute. So remember, we need an array to separate the information from the UI, which is the buttons. So let's create this array with colors, and let's populate it with red, purple, and blue. And now instead of having to define these 3 buttons, I can just map over my colors array and have a color for each one of these elements on my array. And that should, I just need to add some parentheses to my return. Nope. Or maybe I can just do implicit return, so I don't have to. Yeah, and I just need to define the name of the existing or the current color here, and that should do it. So same logic. I have separation now between my buttons and my information. I also don't need to replicate the same button 3 times, so that's very good. And now to hold the counter information, let's not forget that if something is gonna change, usually in a programming language, we need a variable, right? From 0 to 1, to 1 to 2. But in React, we need a little bit more. We need something called state. Remember that state is something that changed. So we have this state. And in this case, the React tells us that for setting the state or creating a new state, we need to define it with the variable useState, like this, and we need to provide an initial value, which is going to be 0, counter. and then we need to change this counter with some sort of function, and which is going to be set counter. So now let's define this counter, and if I want to say 1 instead of 0, it should be 1 here, so perfect. Let's keep on 0, and now if I ever want to change the counter, I just need to call this function, and which is the React way of changing information with the state. So now there's also another thing missing in the start of the game, and it's that every time I need to switch colors, right? Like every time I start my game, I need to switch different pieces of colors in different order to make it more challenging. So maybe I want to start with red, then with blue, then purple, in different order. So to do that, we literally need to shuffle this array somehow. So for example, doing this. But there's plenty of ways of doing that in JavaScript. I'm not gonna go into details. What I would like you to do is just trust me on this one. And this is how we do it in a very simple way in JavaScript. So what we're doing basically, it's calling the sort function that is going to sort this array of colors in a particular way, which is if the number that I'm generating here is negative or positive, it's gonna shuffle this elements of the array, and then it's gonna print them with buttons. So it's a way of, you know, like shuffling your elements, and it's simple to do. There's also another ways to do it, but this is the simplest I could find. So this will be the secret sauce. So if we come back, we'll see, and we refresh, we'll see every time we have a different order of elements. So perfect. Now, how do I make the turn? When do I need to make a turn? Well, every time I click a button, right? So when I click a button, yeah, I need to first increase the counter. Let's have a function here. So I need to set the counter that I just played. And from 0 is going to change to 1, from 1 is going to change to 2. So there is a variable that holds all this information, and it's the counter, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And then we just need to add 1. Okay, I cannot just do this because that way it will always change from 0 to 1, and I need to change from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, etc. So I switch and I play, and it's working. You see, and every time also that I'm switching between buttons, the button switch order. Perfect. Now, after I did that, I just remember, I also need to remember what colors I clicked. So for that, I also need a piece of state called selected colors. You can name it as you want, but I like these selected colors word. And this is gonna be an empty array. So there you go. So when I do this, basically I need to do the selected colors, and I need to push the color that I selected, the color that is here written, right? So I could just write selected colors and then push the color. That should be it. Unfortunately, I cannot do this. In React, we need to create a new variable and then change this variable with the set selected colors function. Remember, that's part of the React specification. So how do I create a new variable containing the colors that I have already? So I just need to create an empty array and add the 3 dots, and I just need to add the selected colors. This will literally create a new array with the colors that I already selected, and I just need to add the new one. So color, sorry, which is the color that is on the button. If I do this, that's perfect. And how do I know it works? Well, I can come here and lock my selected colors variable. I'm gonna open the console, and then I'm gonna start from 0. We have an empty array. So purple, then red, and then blue. And every time I add it, it's remembering what colors I selected already. So that's perfect. And now, after making my turn, how do I know that I finished the game? Remember when I added a color that I already added. So in this case, this needs to happen, this comparison needs to happen also when I make my turn. So how do I know if an element is already inside of an array? So selected colors, which is the array that remembers all the colors that I play, includes, that's your magic word, and then elements to search is gonna be the color that I just clicked. Okay, let's wrap this in an if statement. Okay, if this case is true, you can also delete this. It's not necessary to add it because JavaScript knows that you're writing that. Then we need to lose the game, or like we need to remember that we lose the game. So how do I do that? Well, we could add also an extra piece of state that tells me game lost equals true, and then when we start the game lost equals false. That way we can differentiate our game state that I lost and I didn't lose. So let's create that const game lost set game lost equal use state, and then this is the original, so at the original state, so in the beginning I don't need to have a game lost. But when I lose, when I make my turn, and if I repeated my game, I could make this to true. So I lost. So what do I do with this? Well, maybe I can display a message that says you lost. So the easiest way of doing this in JavaScript and React is game lost and then game lost. This will be the equivalent of having an if statement that says if game lost true, then render this P that says game lost. Unfortunately, inside of the return of a React component, it's a little bit hard. So React developers tend to do this, which is this condition needs to be true for this element to be displayed. It's a shortcut. It's very helpful. So there you go. So let's start with red, and then let's click red again. So game lost. Let's add a restart button. So that should do it. And what happens when I restart? Well, I need to set different things to different values. So for example, the original colors stay the same, but the selected colors are gonna be empty because I need to have a clean memory. The counter is gonna be 0 because I haven't given any clicks. The game lost is gonna change from true to false because I'm gonna restart the game, so I don't need it anymore. So let's do that. So how do I do that? I just make this on click. Whoop. Sorry, that should be better. There you go. So let's remember set counter, it's gonna be 0. Then set selected colors, it's gonna be an empty array. Whoop. And then set game lost to false. So in this game, after I lost, I click restart and everything comes back to normal. And I can restart it again. So this looks pretty good. This is literally the game, but there's several improvements that we can do. I see that the code is all together, like it's mixed between UI and the logic of the game. JavaScript and HTML are really tied up together. It's hard to duplicate. It's all in one component. Let's see what can we do to improve our code. So the first thing that I like to do is put my code in different files. So let's create a new folder called components, and then inside of this components, let's create a component called game, and inside of this game, let's create an index file, and we're literally gonna just copy paste everything here. Don't forget to export default this component. Whoop, and we just forgot to export the use state like this. And now at least when I return, I have two different files. So that's good. I have the main file, which is the app, and I have a different file which holds the logic of my game, or like everything. And in refresh is literally the same. But now, can we do better? Well, yeah, I think that there is some piece of state that we don't need, and it's this guy. And why is that? Well, if we come back here, let's remember the counter, remembers how many selected colors I have. Well, this number 2 is literally how many elements I have in selected colors. And if I add another one, well, I just need to know or calculate how many elements I have in my array, right? So I can do that. That's called derivative state, don't forget that, and try to look that in your code. Sometimes it's very easy to miss. So instead of going to counter, I just need to go to selected colors dot length. And since we don't need to set this state because it's just the number of elements in my selected colors array, I don't need to set it, so I can delete this, and I can delete this. And it works literally the same, but I have one state less to worry about, so that's pretty cool. Another thing that I would like to do, and this is a big topic, is having a separation between my state and the functions that modify that state, that will be the restart and the make a turn, from my UI. Why do I want to do that? It's just for readability and reusability. So for separating these functions, like this state from the UI, I need to create a hook. That's why they're for. So instead of my game component, I'm gonna create a folder called hooks, and then I'm gonna create a hook called use game. Don't forget, every hook needs to have the use word first, and it's just a function. Export default use game is just it's a function. Let's not forget that hooks are pretty much like React components, and they also have life cycle, but the only difference is that they don't have any UI. They only hold state or modification of state, etc. So let's move at the beginning all this state into this hook. And we also need to change this. Oh, I forgot the function keyword here. There you go. So now I have to return to be able to use these colors and this information somewhere else. So I just need to return, or like export everything. So colors, selected colors, game lost, and set game lost. And then I can just import my hook. It's not working very well here, so use game, there you go. And when I use my hook, whatever I return from this hook, I can just require or import it here. So literally I can just copy, paste this whole list and add an equal. So that should be it. So I just moved my state and it works literally the same. But now I have a better separation between where I'm defining my state and where I'm using my state and the UI. But we can do even better. We can have also the functions here that modify this state. So I don't have to define them here on the UI. So how do I do that? Well, the restart function, we talk about it, and it's gonna do these two things. So set colors to empty array and set game lost to false. And let's remember that these functions that change state are already here. Like I imported them before. So I can just, export that function, and then instead of defining it here, I can just say, hey, button, oh, we need to put it here also. Hey, on click restart, and that's it, because I already defined it here and it's separated. So that's pretty cool. Let's not forget about the second function that we can export, which that will be make turn. And for make turn, I have these two conditions, which is set the selected colors and the winning condition. So, and for this, I will remove this logic from here. And when I click the button of the color, I will call this make turn function. Okay. And this make turn function, I need to call it inside of another function because I need to pass a parameter, which is the color that I will like to, add to my array of selected colors. So that's what I need to pass, or like put it on this function like this. So I will receive this color, I will receive it here as well, and then I will do everything as we did before. We're just separating again the logic from the UI. So it's literally the same. That should work like this. We haven't broke anything. Perfect. Now, final thing, we can also remove this sort from here. We don't need it because we can also create these random colors inside of my hook. Whoop. So I could use just the colors that I created, randomize them, and then just export them same way as I did before. And I can just use these random colors that I define in my hook. So there you go, that should work, and I haven't changed anything. I'm just refactoring, it's literally the same logic. And as you can see, the IDE, like the Visual Studio Code, is telling me that I don't need these variables anymore. That means green, because these setters, I use them here now, but I don't use them here. So I can even use less things here. So I want you guys to check how my component looks like now that it's separated. It looks super lean, and I like this approach a lot because we have a separation between the UI, which is this one, and the logic. So perfect. We can go even a step further. Like I don't like this component here because it's a component that we might use. So we can create a new folder inside of the game component called components or something, components, and then I don't know, my game loss component. And let's not forget to export default function game lost. And there is a particularity here is that I will need to access to the restart function inside of the game loss component, but I don't have access from this component. So what I can do is just access to the game loss component from my UI like this, and then just pass the restart function as prop. No, sorry, it's restart, yeah, like this. And then I can just, pass it down and use it. Don't forget to use an object. If you don't use the object, it's not gonna work. It's React specification. So that should be it. You pass it down, and it's even better. Now we have a separation a little bit even better. If we want to use the game loss component, that's perfect. I have it in a different component. So there you go. So what can we do now with this approach? Well, if we come back to our app, for example, and someone says, hey, I want to have two games in the same place, well, you can do it. You can just duplicate the game component, and you can have literally two, and each one of these have separate state, and that's pretty cool. You also can use the use game hook that we're using here, and have a complete different UI. So instead of buttons, you want to put images, or instead of buttons, you want to put divs. You can do it. You don't need to hold the same UI. You can have a separation between your logic and your UI. So that's pretty cool. And that should be it. And final questions that I always get asked is, where do I put the state? Like, well, in this case, we put all the state of the game in a hook like this, and we just call the state where we need it. So that should be a pretty good rule. Put all the state. You don't need to put all the state in a hook, especially if you're just using one or two pieces of state. But if these two pieces of state are changed a lot, like we're doing here, it's pretty good. It's pretty worth it. So I would strongly recommend. Also, I get asked a lot, how do you know where, like, when to split into components? For example, here in this game component, how do we know that we needed this game loss component? Which is, we don't know, but a good rule of thumb is like if you use this component 2 or 3 times in a different part of the application, it's a good idea to do it. You don't need to do it every time, but it's a good rule. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoy, and let me know any questions.